Hello, welcome to today's project. I'm here to talk about my life and the habits I was implementing on a day-to-day basis that led me to extreme anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, which included agoraphobia, it included health anxiety. I reached rock bottom, and I'm here to, if you're new to the channel, welcome, and I hope that my experiences dealing with the suffering and the chaos resonates with you, because I did overcome anxiety. I did get out of the hole. I did reach new heights in my life I couldn't even believe I reached. I was a quitter throughout my whole life. I lived in comfort my whole life. When suffering crept into my life, it flattened me. I didn't know if I was ever going to get out of it. I thought I was going crazy. I thought I was a unique person with a unique illness. And I viewed myself in my totality as somebody who is unhealthy. I viewed myself as someone weak, pathetic. How do you actually move from that identity into someone, the person I am now, who with this developing mindset, who I have so much self-respect for. And so I want to talk about my old lifestyle, because it might resonate with you, might resonate with the suffering you're going through or someone you may know. A great place to start would be the habits leading up to my anxiety. And I think the habits were, they were unconscious. And I was repressing a lot of memories, feelings, emotions. And that's what Freud would call, living unconsciously. Repression is something he talked about, and suppression is the opposite of that. Well, not totally. Suppression is when you're aware of the painful memories and circumstances and you do your best to ignore them. And so I had a bit of that too, obviously, but repression was something I was mostly contending with. I was just feeding my desires, distracting myself with social media, pornography, sex, and weed. I was not paying much attention to my mental state. Everything was getting worse and worse as time progressed. I was living day to day very chaotically and randomly, with no structure, no routine. And I was living in a bubble. So my family provided that for me. It's easy to be 30 and sit around eating Chinese food till 2 a.m., watching pornography or, TV, movies, and not really worrying too much about money, or too much about, in my case, not worrying too much about the future, just living in the moment, which did not work for me. And then I was in a toxic relationship as well. So in that relationship, the thing about that was I wanted to leave. Wasn't working. It was causing me a lot of stress and grief. I was toxic towards her. She was toxic towards me. But I didn't want to make that leap into the unknown, because the relationship was all I knew. I knew, this is something I expected tomorrow. I was going to meet up with her and then continue this relationship. But the thought of ending it and not having anything in my life, giving up the sex, giving up the attention, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to give that up, because what am I going to do without this relationship? I'm just going to be more bored, right? And that's the thing about not addressing these unconscious feelings and emotions and being aware of your current situation, is that, things are just going to snowball and get worse, because one bad habit for me produced 5 negative outcomes. Good manifests good. Bad also manifests bad. And I was manifesting a lot of bad. The habits that I was doing were not sustainable. They're not natural. It's not natural to eat processed foods on a daily basis or stay up late and not get adequate sleep. It's not natural to watch pornography, surround yourself with stimuli like TV, Netflix, social media. It's not natural. I was living in this unnatural state of being where everything was off balance and I was not functioning. I was my whole being was not functioning the way it could be functioning. So cheating was also a part of my lifestyle. Not really, I was just fulfilling the ego, so I wasn't so much mindful and caring towards other people's feelings. I was more internal. I was just trying to feed these underlying desires just to numb, soothe, and distract me, and to transcend the normality of reality, working jobs that I didn't find truly fulfilling, and there was no balance in my life. So I was admiring these chaotic male figures in TV that were ladies' men who were sleeping around, who were drinking, who were smoking, who was like living this freedom, hedonistic lifestyle, and I really admired those men. When I was doing one behavior like watching pornography, 5 different bad outcomes would manifest from that one behavior. And I noticed that when I was getting more anxious and more confused in my life, the more I would fall back onto these behaviors, and things just kept getting worse, like a snowball effect happening. But I noticed that when I would cheat, this was the big thing for me, I felt more confused and uncertain than ever. And now this was the confrontation of my shadow, what Carl Jung would call the shadow, the part of myself that was unintegrated and unmastered. And the thing that was unmastered was this lack of boundaries that I would have in my life. There was no boundaries, and with no boundaries came no self-respect, and things kept snowballing really, really badly in that direction without those boundaries. So when I would cheat, I noticed myself fall into a really chaotic state of PTSD. I couldn't even believe what I did. Like, that's me? Who am I? Oh my, then it opened the doorways to this totally new open space and surroundings that I didn't know were there, but I didn't know who I was at that point. And that was really debilitating. I felt shame, guilt, resentment towards myself. I felt like I had no trust in myself, like I had no control over my urges and desires and my behaviors, nothing. I had no control over it. So a lot of anxiety sufferers who come to me, they also mention that they have no trust within the body. They view themselves as unhealthy people. They look at themselves as unhealthy people. They feel unhealthy in so many different ways. And I say, well, your foundation is built on sand. You got to actually work on your behaviors and try and build on a foundation that you believe to be healthy, right? I had to build on this foundation of, how do I trust myself? How do I trust and how do I trust myself? And how do I build on this new foundation of trust, but also of health as well? Because I did suffer from health anxiety. The cheating actually manifested itself into a UTI, which I didn't have. I thought I had because my obsessions over what was going on internally exponentially built after that experience. It was the manifestation of the guilt and the overwhelming sense of the anxiety that produced a wide range of symptoms, and the anxiety producing the wide range of symptoms made me confuse the symptoms and the feelings and the adrenaline and cortisol as a UTI. I got to this point by, well, many reasons. One, I would say living in comfort, living in a bubble, living to just gratify all of these desires and not having optimal challenge in my life was a big thing. We see that in Siddhartha's story, the Buddha story. Siddhartha grew up in this walled kingdom, overly protected by his father. His father didn't want him to be subjected to death, decay, disease, dirtiness, realities of life. But no matter how tall you build the walls, the snake always finds its way into the garden. And that's why the Adam and Eve story is so profound, because it makes sense. If we're living in a walled paradise, we can live unconsciously. That's what I was doing. I was living in this unconscious bubble. But when you're living unconsciously, you fall into the hands of a snake, because the snakes are around. They're there. That's the reality of it. And for me, living in my comfort, which was well constructed by my parents, and not facing and not confronting the realities of existence, I had to confront the realities of existence randomly and involuntarily. So for me, cheating was like this eye-opening confrontation with the reality of existence. And what was that? Well, the reality is, you can betray your own self. And also, if you're betrayed by someone else, that can open your eyes. Or if you get a disease, that can open your eyes. Or if your family member gets a disease or dies, someone close to you, that opens your eyes. These things can open your eyes because you can't believe it can happen to you. That's the thing. So I couldn't believe that I did this to myself. Like, all the suffering and all the chaos was my own doing. And that confrontation of the snake was eye-opening. So what does Siddhartha do? Well, first of all, Siddhartha has PTSD because he goes outside the walled kingdom into the town, and he witnesses decay, death, disease, and it opens his eyes. He has PTSD. He can't sleep. He's ruminating about it. And he's like, what is going on? I thought I was in a structure that I thought I was in, but it's not what I thought. And what is this? Like, how do you contend with something so real? I mean, so self-evident. Pain is more real than real. So how do you contend with suffering? And so it obsesses him, like it obsessed me. How do I transcend this, especially when I hit rock bottom? So what does Siddhartha do? Well, he obsesses over it, but then the question he continues to entertain is, well, how do I transcend this suffering? And that's the question. And he goes on a quest. His life's mission is to go beyond the walled kingdom into the unknown, to learn how to be the embodiment of somebody who can deal with suffering, who can confront suffering, but also overcome it. How do you overcome that? And so that was his aims, and that became my aim in life. It never was my aim all through high school, college, and then after that, it was not my aim. But the suffering found me, which it does for everybody. But then it opens your eyes to the fact that you can master the suffering. How do you master the suffering? Well, voluntarily confronting it. And how can you buttress yourself from suffering? Optimal challenge on a day-to-day basis. Optimal challenge. Cold showers, meditation, restrictions of the things that comfort you, social media, pornography. I believe that initiations are really important for development, and it is important for development. Back then we had initiations of, for women, definitely the period makes you open your eyes to being a woman. You're an adult now, and also bearing children. But also for males, going out into the unknown with their male role models, their their fathers into the unknown, hunting, gathering. You become a man. You have to move past your old personality. You have to kill those parts of you off, and then you have to manifest culture. But then after you manifest culture, the morals and ethics of the society, you then move beyond that by venturing into more of the unknown and gathering new information, and then incorporating that within you, and then, well, you keep doing that throughout the rest of your life. You keep learning and growing. How can you be more than you are? How can you confront suffering? But all the suffering manifests in all sorts of different ways. But here's the thing. In today's culture, these initiation rituals are not even self-evident anymore, because we can be in our parents' basement eating Cheetos and Chinese food and playing games until we're 30. And then awakening to the fact that, hey, I've been just living in an unconscious bubble. I've been living unconsciously, just feeding on these desires. And when the snake comes in, you're not going to be ready for it. Like I wasn't ready for it, and it eats you. And that's where I'm going to leave you on today's video. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Please leave a comment below. What do you think about this? Did it resonate with you? Lastly, rise above anxiety. I will see you next time. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell so that whenever a new video of mine appears, you will be one of the first to know. Namaste.